The Colts have had the most bizarre quarterback carousel in the past few years, and really, outside of a few Andrew Luck consistent seasons, Indianapolis has been trying to figure out the position since they released Peyton Manning. In 2011, the Colts were terrible, so bad that they got the first overall pick and selected Luck. He was the guy for on and off for 7 years because he just kept dealing with injuries, mainly because the Colts had failed to protect him with a competent offensive line. Then, Luck shocked the entire NFL ahead of the 2019 season when he just decided that enough was enough and retired out of nowhere. Indy had to rely on Jacoby Brissett for a year, who they traded for 2 seasons prior because Luck was hurt. Since the Colts have tried just about every option, they signed Phillip Rivers for 2020. It didn't work. They traded for Carson Wentz for 2021, and that didn't work either. Then this offseason, the Colts traded for Matt Ryan, and that really isn't working. If you thought that Matt Ryan was finally going to be the savior for Indianapolis, you haven't been paying attention. Now, don't get me wrong, Matt Ryan was an incredible player in Atlanta. The dude literally won an MVP, and for a lot of his time with the Falcons, I think he was severely underrated. And if you take away that 28-3 blown Super Bowl lead, his entire career is probably viewed differently. Super Bowl. They blew that lead, but the Falcons never even got a shot to redeem themselves. It left a dark cloud over the career of Matt Ryan. It led to Dan Quinn getting fired and Julio Jones eventually getting traded. He completely ended the reign of the Falcons, and eventually, the end of Ryan's tenure in Atlanta. The Colts traded a 3rd-round pick for him in hopes that the 37-year-old still had some left in the tank, and it surely hasn't looked like he does. Ryan, simply put, has been awful. In 5 games, the Colts are 2-2-1, and Ryan has only thrown 5 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. One of the big reasons why everyone thought Ryan would be better in Indy was mainly that offensive line. But instead, because of injuries for the most part, the Colts line has been horrible, and it's led to a complete mess for Matt Ryan. Indianapolis has tried a bunch of different quarterbacks, and none have really worked out. So maybe the issue isn't quarterback. Last season, the supposed answer was Carson Wentz, whose career was on a much worse trajectory than Ryan's was for sure. Yeah, he was only 28, but was coming off of a season where he threw only 16 touchdowns to a league-leading 15 interceptions, all while getting benched for Jalen Hurts in the process. He had shown elite flashes, especially in that 2017 magical year that the Eagles won the Super Bowl, but ultimately, Nick Foles got most of the credit for that, and everything fell apart in Philadelphia. When Wentz had that great year in Philly, his offensive coordinator was Frank Reich. Reich ended up being hired by the Colts to be their head coach after the year, and there was the hope that maybe Wentz could return back to the elite form if he went back and joined Reich. It was worth a shot, and it did work somewhat well at times. Statistically, Wentz actually had a really good year. He had over 3,500 yards and 27 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. Yes, Wentz threw as many picks in 17 games as Matt Ryan has for the Colts through his first 5. The Colts went 9-8, and they barely missed the playoffs, but everyone knew that they probably shouldn't have. In Week 18, the last week of the year, the Colts simply had to beat the Jags, and they were in the postseason. Jacksonville, the back-to-back worst team in the NFL. Well, Indianapolis just looked bad and ended up losing, and that left a bad taste in everyone's mouth. And the Colts decided that they wanted to look elsewhere and shipped him off to Washington. Matt Ryan is getting a bit up there at 37, but in 2020, the Colts ran it with 38-year-old Phillip Rivers. It was even more evident that he had lost a step, but he was really good at times with the Chargers. Rivers is a borderline Hall of Famer and was very successful in San Diego and then in Los Angeles. He was really just looking for that Super Bowl ring, so he decided to sign with the Colts on a 1-year deal. Indianapolis actually ended up being pretty good. They went 11-5, and Rivers was solid. He threw for over 4,100 yards and 24 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. The Colts ended up making the playoffs, but lost just barely in the wild card to the Bills in what was ultimately the last game of Rivers' career. It's not very hard to find where everything went wrong for the Colts at the quarterback position. It's with Andrew Luck. He was the Colts' first-round pick in 2012, and he was supposed to be the savior, and he kind of was at times. He had a bit of a rough first year in the pros, but the Colts were still 11-5 and ended up going 11-5 in each of his first 3 seasons. But Luck was really good in some of those, especially 2014. Luck led the league with 40 touchdowns and had 4,700 yards and 16 touchdowns. He never did have a good offensive line in front of him, and that's probably the main reason why his career didn't last very long. His first big injury came in 2015 when he suffered a lacerated kidney and a torn ab muscle. Yeah, that sounds pretty damn painful. In the offseason, Luck did get a massive 6-year, $140 million contract and then played in 2016. He did suffer a concussion at one point, but played in all but one game. However, he had a shoulder injury that had been lingering with him since 2015 and decided to have surgery on it after the year, which caused him to miss all of 2017, and he even needed extra surgery. Without Luck, the Colts decided to trade for Jacoby Brissett from the Patriots. Brissett was fine in the meantime, sort of. Luck returned in 2018 and, well, he looked pretty damn good. He even won Comeback Player of the Year after he threw for over 4,500 yards and 39 touchdowns to 15 interceptions. Everything looked back on track for Luck, until it wasn't. He dealt with an injury in the offseason, and he decided that was it. He was over the constant cycle of injuries and rehab, and it just sucked out his love for the game, and he retired at 29 years old. Everything with the Colts' struggles goes back to Andrew Luck retiring. The year before Luck got to Indianapolis, the Colts only won 2 games while starting a quarterback group of Curtis Painter, Dan Orlovsky, and Kerry Collins. I mean, I have no idea how that went wrong, but the Colts didn't have a single worry at the quarterback position for all of the 2000s because they had some guy named Peyton Manning. Not much needs to be said about Manning. He's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time and helped the Colts win a Super Bowl. Manning had a neck surgery after the 2010 season, and it messed up a lot. He couldn't complete his throwing motion, his arm wasn't as strong, and he ended up needing a spinal fusion surgery. There was the big expectation that he may never play again, but obviously that wasn't true. He went to Denver, played a bit longer, and even won another ring. But by the end of the 2011 season, the Colts had moved on and had the first overall pick, and you can't really blame them. That being said, now it's 2022, and the Colts are still searching for what Peyton Manning gave them for so long: stability at the quarterback position. Andrew Luck was supposed to be that guy. He was supposed to be the second coming of Peyton Manning, but the Colts screwed that up. We all knew Jacoby Brissett was just a fill-in, but there were high hopes for Phillip Rivers, then Carson Wentz, and Matt Ryan this year. The Colts have tried so many different things, and the quarterback position is still underperforming and a big problem. And at some point, it's no longer an issue of who's behind center. It's the franchise.